Delays in complaint handling and disputes with insurers are an ongoing issue for victims of the floods around Lismore. More than 2,000 complaints from the northern New South Wales and southeast Queensland floods have been lodged with the Australian Financial Complaints Authority. It's a year on from the devastating weather event, of course. Joining me live now is Justin Untersteiner, who's Chief Operating Officer with AFCA. Thanks very much for your time. So most of the complaints actually around delays. Is this something that's understandable? Was it a sort of a demand thing surging, or is this a disappointing issue to come up because a delay for people in this situation is a really troubling thing on top of all the other stresses they're facing?
Oh, absolutely. We have received over 2,000 complaints over the last 12 months relating to the 2022 floods. And just to give you an idea of that scale, previously the most complaints we'd received for a significant catastrophic weather event was 500. So this is 4 times the size. So it is very, very significant. We do have a level of sympathy for the industry. They have received more claims than they've ever received before. These have been really significant events. And they're also dealing and grappling with international supply chain issues and labour issues as well. In saying that, we are disappointed that we've received so many complaints about delay, and often when we look into those, the primary issue is a lack of communication. We do expect insurers to be communicating regularly with their policyholders and keeping them up to date with meaningful information. As you pointed out, this is a really stressful time for those that are being impacted by these devastating floods, and the last thing that they need is just silence and delay. So we are encouraging insurers to really do more work to keep in contact with their policyholders and keep them up to date as well. Right.
The other thing that strikes me is knowing what's covered in the short term, because some policies include yes, we'll rebuild your home, but in the short term, here's your accommodation, here's some money for food, whatever it might be. Are there people that are told, look, we are working on the bigger claim, but we know you're in this tight spot, we will pay you for the other elements? Is that at least something that insurance companies are prioritising? What happens to these people in the immediate sort of days and weeks?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a really big issue. If you're living in an area and your house has been completely consumed by a flood and it's unlivable, you need to be able to live somewhere. You need to be able to get on with your life. Many policies do cover temporary accommodation as well, or it could be cash in lieu of that to allow people to find somewhere to live. We do receive disputes, however, from time to time where there's a dispute about that and whether that's included in the policy or to what extent as well. And that's a real concern, again, where we're dealing with a policyholder that's under significant stress. The last thing that they need to be worrying about is whether they've got somewhere to live, whether they've got a temporary accommodation, or whether that temporary accommodation is going to run out. Again, we're encouraging insurers to make sure that they're taking a very human-centred approach here and working with those policyholders to make sure that they are covered, particularly where there's delays involved. And we, as mentioned, these are extraordinary circumstances. There will be delays from time to time. So we are encouraging insurers to work really carefully with those policyholders to make sure that they're supported.
I guess some of them, sitting there racking up bills on a credit card as the dispute's going on and wondering if it's a bill they have to pay in the end. The next biggest issue was denial of claim or denial of amount, which I suppose, these are all the normal complaints. Were these numbers higher than normal, the denial of either the total claim or the amount? Did that spike, that rejection rate, if you like?
Yeah, look, as a percentage, it's fairly consistent, but as a total number, it's much higher. And just to give you an idea, we're talking about floods, the floods at the moment, which accounted for about 2,000 complaints. But if you look beyond floods at the overall complaints we're receiving against general insurers at the moment, we've had a 65% increase on the same time last year. In fact, since July, we've received 17,000 complaints against general insurers, which is the most we've ever received on record. So although as a percentage it's about the same, the total number is much, much higher. And denial of claims is a real concern. It worries me that there is a policyholder that didn't know until the point of claim that they wouldn't be covered for something. That is really, really worrying. There are design and distribution requirements for insurers to make sure that they are targeting the right products to the right consumers. So there is an obligation to make sure if, for instance, someone's in a flood-affected area, it's most likely that they'll be looking for cover that covers flood, and so that is a general expectation. I think the other issue too that we are aware of is the readability of the terms and conditions. We have seen lots of evidence that at times the product disclosure statements are really wickedly complex. In fact, I received an updated product disclosure statement from my own insurer about 12 months ago, and even I struggled to understand it. That's a real concern when I work in the industry. And so we are really encouraging insurers to make sure, number one, they're targeting the right products to those policyholders to make sure they're covered for the appropriate things, and two, they're making sure that the information is easily consumed, so people understand what is covered, what isn't covered, and what their own disclosure requirements are as well.
Yeah, I think on that, what everyone would love, I know there have been moves towards this, is just the explanatory page. We get there's a complicated product, but if anything's changing, but just a really clear front page, here's what's in or here's what might be out. Is there a concern that insurance companies in these areas are quietly withdrawing elements of flood coverage? So sending out, here's your next invoice for next year. Oh, look, my policy's actually gone down, great. But somewhere there's a certain type of flood, the most common flood that's not included, and that's on page 68 or whatever it might be. Is that the sort of thing people are raising with you?
No, look, not necessarily. I don't think we're seeing evidence of a change in the policy year to year without bringing that to someone's attention.
Okay.
Generally, we're not seeing that. I think the broader issue that we might be seeing when it comes to denial, one is that the original policy actually didn't cover something, and the consumer didn't know that, or it wasn't brought to the consumer's attention in an easy way. I think the second can be a dispute about what caused the issue. And to give you a really a simple example that we see from time to time is if there was heavy downpour or rain which produced leaks in the roof which caused damage or mould in the house, the question is, was the primary cause the rain, or was the roof poorly maintained, right, which was really the primary driver of the leak? And so those are some of the disputes that we see. In that situation, what we will be looking at is independent expert reports to help us understand what the true cause was, and to determine whether was it the event, the weather event, or was actually there something else that caused it behind the scenes.
Okay, yeah, and that's where it gets complicated. Really briefly, is there a concern that insurers in this situation, it's a numbers game, they just try it on, they up their rejections a bit, they figure some people will give up or won't get the right help, and they save on payouts?
Look, I hope not. I hope that's not the case, and I think generally the insurers are trying to do the right thing. Again, I have some sympathy for the insurance sector at the moment. I mean, they are dealing with the largest number of claims that they've ever received related to a catastrophic event in history. I mean, that's hard, and at the same time with these other forces, supply chain issues, labour issues, it is really hard, and I do sympathise with them. Again, though, I think there is definitely lots of room for improvement, and we are expecting to see better lines of communication from the insurers, and more work done to work directly with those affected throughout the policy. Yeah.
Then you talk about whether some areas might need more subsidies if we're going to see more and more flooding in these areas. Justin, great to get your thoughts today. Thank you.